was just magic. It was just beautiful.
So actually achieve it was something that, I was going to say special, but you really can't explain it like that.
I had no idea that would be his last test match.
And we wanted to win it, but we didn't know how it would affect rugby in this country.
I suppose there was a fear, you couldn't let this one go.
And I looked in the mirror and I thought, why me, Lord? Second, how did all this happen?
There's the Grand Slam for Australia. Australia has done it. You beauty.
The expectations were that, we knew we had a good team. We knew we had a great pack of forwards. I was just delighted to be a part of the squad, to be honest, and to be going on that tour. It was a monumental tour back in the amateur days. We went for 10 weeks. We played 18 matches.
Well, we'd had a nasty lesson in 81, 82 and went away as the allegedly the best ever Australian touring team. All the Ellas, all the guns.
You want to win every game, and if you win every game, you've won a Grand Slam. But a number of us had been on the 81, 82 tour where everyone was saying, oh, this is a Grand Slam team. And we played all right, but we ended up winning 1 out of 4. So there's probably a lesson learned out of that.
When it came around again in 84, we felt that, we had a lot to make up for. We wanted to do it our way. We wanted to play attacking rugby. We wanted to take them on and let these guys know that, we are also a pretty good side and should be respected.
But I think we went there knowing that we had a great chance. Alan Jones was our coach. He brought over Alec Evans, who was our forwards coach. I think Alan sort of understood his limitations, that he was still new at international rugby and he wanted someone to help him on the forwards.
Players just loved the guy, and he was a hard ass in his day playing for Queensland, and people respected any time he spoke, and he more or less took the forwards. Alan took the backs, but then had a sort of wide overview of what's going on.
Alan knew himself well enough to know that the guys needed a bit of a relaxing figure around as well as Alan, and apart from his rugby knowledge, Alec provided that. He was in a sense one of the boys, but he knew his stuff, and he knew his stuff that Alan potentially was a bit weaker on. So it was a vital part of it, and if you talk to the guys now, Alec is a major part of that success.
Alan Jones was a pretty intensive coach. We had a lot of new players. Michael Liner was, I think, he's probably first or second tour. Nick Farr-Jones, who only met when we were gathering together before we left. We had the new generation, so to speak.
Alan Jones, new coach, whole new view of how to sort of tackle the Northern Hemisphere. Created the biggest forward pack Australia's ever put on the field, average 101 kilograms per player in that scrum. Jonesy got his vision from what happened in 81, 82 and just knew if we dominated tight 5, dominated set piece, then we could let loose.
There's just something about him that was different. It was, in a way, it was more academic. It was slightly more demanding, probably, and I think it was pretty pragmatic. So he stood on a few toes, and people don't like their toes being stepped on, so you wouldn't say that he was, universally loved by the way he did it, but he didn't care. He wanted a result.
He immediately sort of changed the dynamic from the point of view of, apart from selections, the way he trained a team. He's a great exponent of racehorses, thoroughbreds, so he knew how to taper a side coming into a big game.
For the team, the older guys who'd been a part of the 80-81 tour, the Poitevins, the Slacks, Steve Williams, I think Andy McIntyre might have been there. I'm sure that they realised this was their last roll of the dice against the home unions in Ireland. And so we didn't want to give up that opportunity of, having a great achievement of winning a Grand Slam. Yeah, look, Andrew was a great captain. I mean, I didn't know him at all in the beginning of 84. But he was just a really good, as I said, a great balance for Alan. Alan was so uniquely serious most of the time and focused, and the Jones way was an extremely professional way. Slacky was laid back, relaxed, particularly away from the training field or away from, the match day and what have you. But my memories are that just a really good laid back guy who come game day led us really well.
Well, I was pretty happy. Look, I was reasonably shocked in the day that Queensland played New South Wales at Concord Oval, and they were picking the team to go to Fiji, the Australian team, and they had a function after, as we did in those days, and I'm sort of walking in, we'd won the game, and not thinking about anything but the fact that, I hope I'm in the team. And Mark walked out, and Mark said, "Oh, Slacky, I've got to go, mate, congratulations." And it was a strange sort of congratulations because I was pretty confident I'd be in the side, but there was just something there. And so anyway, I went in and, Slack's the captain, and I was quite taken aback. But I think obviously Mark had been told prior, and that was why there was this thing he said to me before he'd gone. And I could tell that, he was disappointed, and so he should have been disappointed.
When you get told that you've been dropped, so to speak, from being the captain of the country, it sort of hit me really hard. When I think about it afterwards, I probably think that they've done the right thing for me. Like, I was always playing reasonably well, but I could always play better.
Really intelligent move. Like, Mark Ella to me is the best player I've ever played with or against. So incredibly gifted, great person. Slacky was a leader of men, liked the responsibility. Mark doesn't really sort of like that responsibility. Alan recognised that. Alan could work more effectively with Slacky because personalities are personalities, and Slacky worked very well with Alan. He could be firm. He could step back if he needed to. So that was a masterstroke too, and to have that balance in the team and really sort of probably give Mark Ella the freedom to be Mark Ella, and don't worry about the captaincy, just be Mark Ella.
We can have all these debates about whether captaincy burdens an individual player, whether you're a cricketer, footballer, or tiddlywinks. But it worked. I was happy to take the responsibility. Mark stepped up to the plate in terms of he didn't, spit the dummy. He was disappointed, but he just played his socks off, and it worked for everybody.
Alan loves the pressure, and no better example than when we landed in London. In those days, you're travelling economy, and everyone's scrunched up, and we sort of get into London. Rooms aren't ready, and Alan's gone, we're going to go and train. So the local liaison going, you can't be training, you just come through all the way from Australia in economy class. No, we're going to training. Get us a bus, we're going to training. Went to training, he absolutely flogged us. Great session. All the press were there, just like, I couldn't believe it. And the skill work from that team, they made a statement then. And I always remember when we got to the airport, they're all the usual sort of gaggle of Fleet Street in those days, and they're there ready to sort of go. And normally Chilla Wilson, who's the manager of the team, should be doing the liaison with the press. Jonesy sort of pushed him aside. Alan Jones, being Alan Jones, just straight into him. Bang. Made a statement then and just said, this is where we're coming from. We're coming to win the whole lot from the get-go.
Yeah, leading into that first test at Twickenham was special. I think the team was selected as was normal on the Tuesday.
Alan was a bit ahead of others potentially in eyeballing the opposition and knowing that what they did and how they played and what this individual did, more so than perhaps in years previous. But as the players, we really, particularly that first test, we were just about concerned of getting some rhythm happening, and I think my recollection is that England had a few new chums as well. I think they were probably trying to find their way.
Now it's Underwood. He's jet propelled this man. Good pass. Carlton, Mark Ella the tackler.
We played the All Blacks in the 3-test series before the Grand Slam, and we lost 2-1. I remember in the last day, like after the game, I knocked on Jonesy's door and I said, I'm happy to be part of the team and I want to help, but I know Slacky was the captain, but he was the outside centre. I said, if we're going to do any good overseas, I need to control the game, like the quarterback. I need to actually control the game. And whilst Alan and I had a love-hate relationship. He said yes. He said he agreed. And so that made me a lot more confident that, okay, I was number 10, and like all number 10s should, they controlled the back line and the tactics we're going to play.
So 3-3 at half time. It was not great. Then Mark Ella just cut loose in the second half.
Mark Ella! Mark Ella! Oh, what a great try to Australia!
The next day in the front page of the Times or the Telegraph or whatever was the English press complaining about it being obstruction because there was a dummy runner, and they say, Slack got in the way of line or whatever. But that became the big controversy that they jumped on. But it was the key moment, I think, in the game.
I only called that play probably once or twice in the whole tour because we had a New Zealand referee. So we'd obviously done that 1,000 times when we played against the Kiwis. And so it was a play that I thought if we were going to do it, we have to do it now. When I did score the try, the English players were actually all basically gathered around the referee saying, you can't do that, it should never have happened. It should be penalised for it. But it was too late. He gave me the try.
Playing your first test at a place like Twickenham in such an important game, it was amazing because you've just got to remember that I really did have a different sort of a ride to pulling on that jersey in '84. I'd just turned 22. I didn't play first 15 at my school. I wasn't good enough to do that. I was playing second division rugby. Sydney University went down for 1 year in 1983 to second division. So, I was playing, with no disrespect, Liverpool, Campbelltown, Hornsby in 1983, and all of a sudden I'm playing at Twickenham in my debut. And so, I felt the pressure. But at the same time, the guys around me, they probably gave me an armchair ride, as I've said, a great pack, great ball, playing inside arguably one of our greatest number 10s of all time, who said, you do the chucking, Nick, I'll do the catching.
He caught one pass from Nick and then just flicked it straight through to Michael Liner.
Liner, Gould, Matthew Burke, Gould, Liner, try! Another great try to Australia. Michael Liner is over the moon.
I think Porto scored after that.
Here they go now, Australia. Look at the overlap. Ella, oh, what magnificent hands. Campese. David Campese. Underwood chasing. Poitevin. Try. The referee has awarded a try. Another sensational effort by the Australians. And did you see the hands of Mark Ella there?
And I remember sort of watching and just going, wow, how did he sort of pick that ball up?
Sensational pickup by Mark Ella.
Well, that's what I'm picked for. You're playing at the highest level. You've got to be able to catch the ball. Doesn't matter if it's up there or down below.
And I've seen it so many times playing with him at Randwick or New South Wales or Sydney, and it was always such a great experience in life to play with Mark.
There's the full-time whistle. It's a great start to the international campaign by the 8 Wallabies. They have defeated England by 19 points to 3.
We were good enough on that day. 19-3 sounds convincing, but I don't think we convinced ourselves that was anywhere near as good a performance as it needed to be if we were going to continue on. We'd played 5 games, but as that test unit, we were rusty. I think it'd be the best way to describe it.
The relief of having got that victory in the bag and then just not even worrying about when the next test is and whether I'd be selected for that, but just to enjoy the success.
Probably what the nations didn't see was the bus trip from London up to Leicester, which was it was a pretty wild affair, and there was a lot of beer drunk on the way, and we got there and all the guys just wanted to go straight to bed, which they did, but we were probably celebrating that we'd got the first one, and I think at times this is the Alan Jones interventions. Okay, go and enjoy yourselves, but when teams started to over-enjoy themselves and overindulge, bang, straight into him, and he was brutal.
Over there we had what we called the on-off button. This is my memory. When it's on-off, enjoy the hospitality of the home unions and get out there and enjoy, all that England, Ireland, Scotland and Wales have to offer. Just don't do anything when the button's on off, that when you've got to flick it back to on, 7 o'clock typically in the morning the next day, you're not going to be prepared to strut your stuff on the training paddock. Lansdowne Road is quite unique in itself. They jam-pack it every test match.
Great place to play. I'm motivated by an environment like that. I've never lost at Lansdowne Road in 4 test matches. Fantastic to go a ground where the stands are right on top of you.
The police band again striking up the notes, and there's Waltzing Matilda. Andy Slack, who must know this ground almost as well as he knows Ballymore, because he's had a couple of seasons here with Wanderers.
Well, I knew a few of the blokes because I played club rugby with a couple of the guys in the Irish team. So I knew something about them and I knew how they thought a bit. It was a tough, gritty Irish team, and you'll always, however well they play, you can always chuck gritty into the mix when you're talking the Irish, and that's how it was that day.
I threw the bad pass to Matthew Burke on the wing.
Pointerman, Matthew Burke's outside. Oh, they bombed a certain try.
Yeah, and Hugo McNeil was the Irish fullback, and I would have run right at the top of him.
Pointerman could have scored himself. He was through and then passed forward.
We did sort of point out what you doing it for. You could have scored yourself. But anyway, that's just the way it is at the heat of the moment.
David Campese, arguably the greatest Australian player ever. Always trail Campo through a fair bit of speed so I could stay with him. He'd always put you into space, and he put me into space on that particular move. Berkey outside, no one inside, but anyway, I'll always regret that pass. It was really dog eat dog out there, and then Mark pulled off this magical field goal which gave us some breathing space.
Mark Ella, field goal. It's a good one. Oh, lovely puck there by Mark Ella.
In '79, I went to Argentina on my first trip as a Wallaby, and I played against Hugo Porter, and he was just a freak. And so I realised that, I can run and catch and pass and do everything, but there's more to the game.
The game he wouldn't have won without Mark Ella was the Irish Test. Everything that you could do as an international 5'8" that day, I think Mark did.
When required, kick field goals.
Field goal attempts. It's a good one. Scores a level. Second field goal for Mark Ella.
That field goal was just perfect timing.
That gives Australia great heart.
Looking back on it, you think, well, it certainly gave us some energy, the fact that he did that, and whether you turn that energy into performance, I think we probably did. It got us out of there, and then he scored that final try because, his positional play was always excellent.
Cutler, brilliantly won. Ella. Mark Ella takes it up. Line up. Oh, man taken out of the play. Matthew Burke. Campese. Mark Ella. What a try.
When I looked at it a while ago, I said, oh, that was pretty good. I mean, you don't see that type of play in the modern game. I'm not saying it was me that did it all, but we, with the guys, it was picture perfect. Just, you couldn't have planned it any better.
He just made the right decisions that time. Now, Mark has rightly has got a big place in Australian rugby history, but it didn't mean he played perfect footy every time. Playing for Randwick with all that flair stuff doesn't always cut the mustard at international thing. And I think Mark has found that out in various test matches that he played, but on this tour specifically, I don't know whether he said it to himself or made a call or just matured as a footballer to the point where, okay, I can do all these things. I can pick the pill up off my feet. I can flick. I can, ghost through people. But I've got to make the right calls as a number 10, and I've got to read the game and the circumstances. And I don't think he's ever done it better than he did against Ireland.
So there's the full-time whistle. The 8 Wallabies have done it. They've done it pretty tough, but they've showed all the character and courage that we know they're famous for.
It was a great team drink afterwards, and we always had, there was an award for the biggest whinge of the week, and unfortunately that was decided by the team, so Alan Jones always got that award. And what you had to do was Topo Rodriguez's 3 knuckles, and he had big knuckles of scotch, and you had to sort of down this scotch. And poor old Jonesy, every after game court session, he got done with this having a bloody drink the Topo scotch glass of scotch. So yeah, it was painful for him. But that was a good night. That was a really good night, and we had a good day next day. And again, it's Alan and Alex recognising, okay, the guys have achieved. We've got to sort of have a bit of fun, and then go on and start training very hard on Monday.
Australia has won here only once, 1966. Can these 8 Wallabies do it here this afternoon?
We moved on to Wales, and there's always the saying, the Welsh saying, wait till you get to Wales. Wait till you get to Wales, boyo. And that basically means, look, you might have knocked over England, you might have knocked over Ireland, but wait till you get to the Arms Park.
No one in the world sings better than the Welsh, and you hear the singing coming down into the dressing room. It came into the dressing room 81, 82. You could sort of walk out this enormous amount of like beautiful singing and noise. Same thing was happening in 84.
It was intimidating when you first run on the field. It takes a while to settle down. Nervous would be an understatement.
I can't remember if there was any difference, from the pack leading into the game. I mean, they were always extremely focused. Alec would have done stuff in private with them. I'm sure that the guys, particularly Tommy, Topo and Mac, would have really concentrated on looking at the way they scrummage, looking at, where their possible weaknesses might be.
Good ball here. Far Jones. Straight through. Gould. Grigg. Lawton. Tommy Lawton has scored for Australia.
I remember going and putting my arm around him and said, mate, we're 10 minutes into this game. You're going to show up for the next 70, or are you just going to live on the glory of one good moment? I forget what I said, but it was, whatever came into my head, it was about Tom, focus, pal.
Oh, he's still talking about it. He never shuts up about it. The try sort of pulled out of nowhere at Cardiff Arms Park.
His late grandfather kicked 3 conversions for the Waratahs in their 18-8 victory here.
Tommy knows that ultimately you've got to douse the excitement and get the job done.
After that, I think it sort of knocked the wind out of the Welsh forwards and Welsh team, and I think they started to panic a little bit after that.
Far Jones, overlap. Campisi. One man in front, Wyatt. Campisi. Pointerman. Liner. Try.
Alec Evans was just such an incredible part of that Grand Slam victory. Found this scrum machine, which was like the revolutionary scrum machine that no one else was using out there. We had 2 guys carted this thing all around the UK in 1984. Everywhere you turn up, there's a scrum machine. So that was really vital. And I always remember when we played at Connectley, the Wales had this aura about their scrum. And we're training at the ground there, and this scrumming went for about an hour. Then at the end, Alec Evans said, okay, enough. And Topo says, no more. So we did more, and we went out the next Saturday, absolutely towelled the Welsh scrum. I always remember the Friday afternoon paper was the Welsh scrum is going to crush Australia. I thought, bad headline, boys. You're going to get done here. There was an expectation from that crowd as soon as that scrum packed, and that place is a cathedral, and it's obviously the Millennium Stadium now, but Cardiff Arms Park was one of the great cathedrals of world rugby, and so the whole place is singing when that scrum's going down, and they're all getting happy to sort of put it on us. Singing stopped.
22 minutes gone in the second half. Australia leading 13-3. Can Wales hold on? Now they go for the pushover. Try! The Welsh scrum has been pushed over the goal line, and And the try has gone to Steve Tyneman. Australia is in the lead by 17-3. Tommy Lawton throws his fist to the crowd.
For those guys to have done that, the forwards, it was unbelievable. I mean, I've never heard of an Australian side done that since.
We've had that reputation in those days of being a, fancy Dan kind of bunch of rugby players who could throw the pill around and do the odd thing. But when it came to the tough grunt and work, we were a bit, we had lessons to learn. Well, we were the teachers that day.
The Australian forwards have done something no one was thought possible here at Cardiff Arms Park. The Welsh pack has crumbled.
If you're watching the video, I'm just sort of urging them on, keep going. From behind it was a great view, I can assure you, from basically a metre or two behind that scrum.
It was just magic. It was just beautiful. And, I think all credit especially to Tommy Lawton, Topper Rodriguez and Andy Mack, because they were really one of the best front rows Australia's ever seen. Big five guys behind them, and so plenty of strength coming through, but just technique and just pure motivation.
It's a fitting reward here for Steve Tyneman. He's done so much work, as has the tight five.
Scrummaging is an art, and the way that they exploited the Welsh that day and got that pushover try, they would talk about that as one of the great tries for Australia without doubt.
And it's great to see them put tremendous pressure on the Welsh scrum, which is believed to be the joy of all scrums.
Eddie Butler was probably, I think I might have been the captain or close to it, but he was a great footballer, and I could see what was going to happen.
I was watching him and I was just thinking, Eddie, don't do that, mate. Mark Eller's about to bloody pounce. He switches the ball back inside and Mark Eller just goes bang.
Mark Eller! What a try! And what an end to the test match! He scored a try in every test on tour! And what an ending for Australia!
Fantastic.
What a way to do it!
He said I called for it, and maybe I did. He just turned around and passed it, and I said, thank you, and took off. And to this day, Eddie, we've caught up a few times after that. I said, thank you, Eddie. I wouldn't have got a Grand Slam if you didn't give me that wonderful pass. It was terrific.
I think it might have been the last try, but, it was the nail in their coffin, no doubt.
Alan Jones is the Prince of Wales. The Wallabies have won 3 out of 3. They're on target for their Grand Slam.
We knew we had Scotland at Murrayfield was not going to be a pushover, but we all started to sense that not only could this be a Grand Slam, but it could be a slam for Mark as well.
Mark Eller, he deserves a knighthood, this man. The Queen requested a copy of Ella, the book of the Ella brothers for Prince Edward. It might be a collector's item after that one.
I think at this stage, people started to realise there was something special about this Wallaby team. All of a sudden, there was talk about, there's a Grand Slam looming, and this team is pretty exceptional.
Like if you want to make a name in history, win a Grand Slam, and so that was a chance for us to sort of do that. And as that tour went through, and it was 2 months tour, so it was quite a lengthy sort of time, but it was just so exciting as you knocked off England, you knocked off Ireland, you knocked off Wales, and then you had Scotland to go.
One of the great recollections is after we beat Wales in '84, which means we had one game to go against Scotland. Chris Roach, who wasn't in the test team, he'd played against Ireland, but he wasn't in the test team that day, but he'd been there in '81 where we got beaten by Wales and we shouldn't have really lost it, and he made a speech in the dressing room at Cardiff Arms Park after we'd won that, and it was quite an emotive one, and it referred to what had happened in '81 and how we'd sort of blown the opportunity we had then, and he wasn't going to be wasting those 3 years hanging around with a bunch of people who weren't going to take advantage of it. So I think that had something to do with our focus for that final test.
And we welcome you throughout Australia to this potentially historic test match between Australia and Scotland at Murrayfield.
Getting to Murrayfield was really special. We knew that You don't get many opportunities like this, and that we had to seize the day.
At the North British Hotel where we stayed, before we left for the ground, I remember Alan's speech being, it wasn't over the top, it wasn't ranting and raving, but it just seemed relevant to what we had ahead.
Jones in particular spoke to us about the spent arrow and the missed opportunity, and let's not miss this opportunity to create history for Australian rugby. And my just overriding memory is, let's get out there and just strut our stuff and do exactly what we've been doing. But this is a great opportunity in the history of Australian rugby.
That morning, Alan went down with Michael Liner and asked the guy who took care of the ground all about the wind and the ground. Of course, it's quite a windy sort of day at Murrayfield. Which way's the wind go? Which way would you kick off? And he's, I'm just a tourist from Australia, and this is my son Michael, and boom, boom, boom. And they just got all this information out, made the right call from when we from the kick-off, and I think again, when you look at that Test match, that was our most comprehensive win, just from the point of view of just the tries we scored.
Gould, almost go, oh yes, slack, Campese, he's over.
Campo, I think, underestimated in sense of how hard he worked. Like, he had a lot of natural God-given talent, speed and the rest of it. He set an example in his own way, and not just in his brilliance, but in his graft.
Mark Ella, off they go. Campese, Tyneman, Campese, can he get there? Beattie chasing, they won't catch him. Another Australian try. What a passage of play. Campese's second try of the game.
I suppose there was a fear, you couldn't let this one go. This was never been done before, let's do it. And that team was so well prepared that some teams may sort of choke with that pressure. That team just sailed through.
I did actually room with Roger Gould leading up to the Test match. I said, Roger, you're going to look after me? He said, Mark, I'll look after you. And as it turned out, Roger passed me the inside ball, I scored, and I got the 4 tries. I had to buy beers all night that night.
Australia have it, Mark Ella. Gould, overlap for Campese. Mark Ella, he's done it! A try in every Test match! The first time in history! Mark Ella, the toast of Australia! He can't believe it.
Well done, mate. You've done something no one else has ever done.
And it shows the great value of keep backing up, which Mark Ella does so well.
What I do recall is it must have been in Mark's head, because I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, as he put the try down, he then threw it up, which said to me, he knows what he's done here, a little bugger. Yeah.
Nobody knew that was probably going to be my last game for Australia. And you can't plan something like that, to score 4 tries, in the Grand Slam tour. It just sort of doesn't happen, and it just, for whatever reasons, or luck, I did it.
I had no idea that would be his last Test match. Had I known that, I think the celebration would have been bigger in a way, but I just thought, how lucky am I to play alongside this guy? What a fantastic achievement.
A moment that will never be forgotten in Australian rugby.
I was lucky enough to score my first Test try in that match. It was just something that Tommy Lawton and I had worked. A quick line out with, the forwards, a short line out from memory, fading backwards to take the defence with them. And I, scrum half, would just duck down the short side.
Jones, another one.
Well, they caught him napping there. What a great try.
The Australians are surely home now, and the Wallabies are running riot.
So one of the most unconvincing of tries, but it's something we worked well, and it was probably then that I realised we had enough points, we had the buffer, there wasn't enough time for them to come back, but also that we were going on with it, and this wasn't an opportunity that we'd missed.
There's the Grand Slam for Australia. It's Australia's record-winning margin over Scotland too. Australia has done it. You beauty! 37 points to 12.
Incredible after the game. There's almost shock that we'd achieved this, and the dressing room was totally silent, just stunned.
Came out of the game and everybody's chirpy, obviously. We're delighted, and we then got a function to go to, so I go to my room and, room on my own, advantages of being captain. And I remember having a shower and I looked in the mirror and I thought, why me, Lord? Phew. And, we've done all this, and just sort of looked at myself for sort of 20 seconds thinking, how did all this happen? Little boy from the Mount Gravatt Hotel. Bang, but it did. Anyway, that little moment went after 20 seconds, went back down and carried on. But, so I do clearly recall that.
I think the funniest thing was it sunk in when we had our session back at the North British Hotel, and everyone walked in. It was really, again, totally quiet. So Alan starts to speak, then Topo starts crying, and then everyone starts crying. Let's go, what's going on? So I think it hit everyone then that was never done before, and no one could achieve what we'd done. And it was such a hard work getting there. It was hard work. It was great work, but it was hard work. And I think if we'd gone all that way and we'd blown the last one, then there'd be a lot of shattered hearts, both within the team and within the supporters.
And the guys really affected all of us for a long, long time. And even to this day, when we see each other, we're still best of mates. And we've got a lot of respect for each other and what we did, which is something that we can never forget.
Mark Ella! Mark Ella!
What a privilege to play my first 4 tests with Mark Ella, and for him to score tries, in all of those tests.
I still can't forgive him for retiring at the end of '84. For a guy who is a legend of Australian rugby, he did come back and play for Randwick, and was still as good then. He said he mixed reasons of why, but this is a guy in any sport that would become the true best player, because what he did up to '84 was incredible. He should have kept on going.
I had a job. I needed to work harder. I couldn't dictate all my time, travelling around the world when earning no money. So I basically sat down, got married a week after I got home, and got back to work. Just moved on. Sport was very much a part of my life, and rugby in particular, and the friends that I had. And, it was just, rugby was the years in rugby at Randwick, New South Wales, Sydney, and with the Wallabies, Australia, was just terrific. But there was other things to do, and it wasn't because that I was dropped as Australian captain. It wasn't that. Just like I said, I just needed to, I guess, start the second part of my life, which was not being a player.
But I think generally the feeling was, oh, Mark, mate, you got a future here, or you got a future in rugby league. You just got a big time future from a footy point of view. But there was Mark's call, as I say, an admirable one.
I did ring up Wally Lewis a few times, and he was captain of the Kangaroos, captain of Queensland, and captain of the Broncos. So he was probably the biggest profile rugby league player. But he was a good mate of mine, and I used to ring him. And after about 5 or 6 weeks, I rang him up and said, Wally, I've decided I'm not going to play rugby league.
The '84 team are very close, so that's good. We've kept in touch. It's 40 years ago, so we've lost Stan Pilecki from our ranks, and guys are getting on, but that team remains tied in history from what was achieved there.
But watching those 12 tries and hearing Gordon Bray and his co-commentators commentate that, particularly Mark Ella's performance and that try in the final test against Scotland.
Mark Ella! He's done it! A try in every test match!
I love it. I love just the fact that I was a kid who watched his first rugby test the year before in 1983, and I got that honour and privilege to play in that team, scoring some of the great tries. You know, it's something that I'm very, very proud of, and something I think that I was just so privileged to be a part of that.
Yeah, we knew what our goal was. I guess before we left, we were probably 50-50 on whether we could win a Grand Slam, or 50-50 whether we can beat two of the four sides. You know. So actually achieve it was something that, I was going to say special, but you really can't explain it like that. It's something that you never would think. It was more hope than reality.
Yeah, I think winning the 84 Grand Slam was, I could almost compare it to with the 91 World Cup.
It's just like every tour, you want to succeed and you want to have something at the end of it that you can, you know, pin yourself to, and the Grand Slam was that.
The Grand Slam was achieved playing running rugby, Wallabies rugby, skills, fitness, teams having a crack. And that's what probably we're so proud of.
To win a Grand Slam is, I mean, we were naive, just young players, and we wanted to win it, but we didn't know how it would affect rugby in this country. You know, in Australia, and the respect then we gained from, you know, New Zealand and South Africa, you know, the big world size in England, things like that. You know, it became then a game that got more respect, a game that people wanted to be involved with. And I think we were the start of that.
Andrew Slack, the great leader of the 8 Wallabies. Really, let's just let the pictures tell the story. Lawton, Nick Barr-Jones, Campese, I think he's going to keep that ball. He might even sleep with it. Hoyterman, Michael Liner, the Bird, Gould, Parkella, and there he is, Big Steve Cutler. And historic Grand Slam for the 8 Wallabies. Parkella! Parkella! Another great try to Australia. Campese! Parkella! What a try! Tommy Lawton has scored for Australia. Hoyterman! Liner! The Australian forwards have done something no one was thought possible. What an end to the test match! Jones, another one. Parkella! He's done it! A try in every test match! A moment that will never be forgotten in Australian rugby.